Hello friends, I'm Rosa. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new here. So I feel like this wrap up is up a little bit late, but we're gonna talk about every single book that I read in May anyway. I'm also trying out a new, it's not really a new setting because it's still my bookcases in the background. I just decided to sit in a different spot. So let me know what you think. I think the lighting is a little bit better here. I don't have a ring light, so that's a whole situation that I kind of have to work around. But for today, we're trying this out. If it doesn't work with you, let me know. So I got my reading graph right here. Graph? That's not what it's called. That's fine, whatever. The reading part of my journal. I read a total of 9 books. It's about 3,700 pages. I got 2 3 stars, 5 4 stars, and then 2 5 stars, and didn't really read a lot, so it was a bit of a busy month, but we're gonna talk about those 9 books right now. So let's start out with one of the ones that I ended up reading last, which was my book club's. Is my camera really focusing on Fable in the background? Hello. Wrong redhead. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's This Poison Heart. It was my book club's primary book pick. If you want to check out the book club, there's always a link to it in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section. This is young adult fantasy, kind of urban fantasy. It's set in our world. We got romance, we have magic, there's some LGBT representation as well, and many plants. In this book, we follow Briseis, who has a very interesting power. She can kind of grow plants, but she doesn't really fully know how to control it, but she can grow plants. Pretty cool. Along with her powers to grow plants, she also has an immunity to poisons, which is pretty handy. I mean, if you at least live among poisonous plants, I would say it's pretty handy. But she lives in New York with her 2 moms, and one day receives a letter from her biological mom's sister mentioning that she has actually inherited a big estate outside of the city. So her moms and herself go off to this estate to check it out. When she gets there, she finds out that there's like a very intricate garden kind of that comes along with the estate. There's some secrets going on in the garden. She also finds herself, because this estate comes with like a huge yard, if you will. Like a lot of acres of land is what I'm trying to say, but I don't actually know what an acre is. But because they have so much space, so much garden space, it also means that Briseis actually has the opportunity to finally improve on her powers, because she hasn't really been able to do that much in New York, because there are so many people in New York and not a lot of garden space, because you know that costs money in a place like New York. But along with the inheritance of this estate, it also turns out that there are some secrets, and maybe there's something else going on. Maybe, perhaps. I enjoyed reading this. It was very easy to read. I would say very easy to digest. It wasn't complicated in any way, but I felt like for the first at least like 50 to 60% of the book, it was just too slow. There were, of course, introductions of characters and stuff that you kind of have to go through, but it felt like there was a little bit too much of it, because the introduction was really slow, and then she hangs out with a person for like a fourth of the book or something, like 90 pages. And it's kind of like, you could have cut that down a little bit, I feel. And then suddenly it takes off. Suddenly stuff starts to happen, and then it got interesting again. But I don't know, the pacing seemed a little bit off at times, which was kind of a turn off for me personally. I also feel like some of the relationships, not with her moms. Her moms are my favorite part of this book. They were, I love them. They were funny and cute, and just, I don't know, I feel like I have a good picture of them. Like, their personality was well, like, built up, if you get what I mean. Mom's hand down, Mom and Mo, hands down, my favorite part of the book. But as for Briseis and her friends, I just kind of, I don't know, I'm not really sold on them yet. I am interested in the second book though, which is called This Wicked Fate. But I will say there's a bit of an age gap situation with our lead character, who's 17. I think she's 17 at least. She's definitely not 18. And her love interest at some point. So I have read a lot of books with big age gaps. Think like From Blood and Ash, House of Earth and Blood, Echo Tar. There's probably some other ones that I'm just forgetting. A lot of age gap stories. Oh, Aelin and Rowan, you know, the whole situation. But I think for me, the difference is that while they aren't creepy to me, the characters, first of all, are older than 18, so technically they're adults. But also, those stories are fantasy. This is urban fantasy, so it's something that's supposed to take place in our world. And just like I found Edward and Bella kind of creepy because of the age gap and certain other things going on in that book, I kind of feel like this is a little bit creepy for me. Also because I do feel like it has like an element of insta-love, which if you're over 300 years old and you instantly feel attracted to a 17-year-old, that seems odd to me. I don't know. But I don't really know if I can fully justify like why I differentiate between fantasy worlds and urban fantasy stories in that way. I just know that whenever I read an age gap story in our world, I have issues with it. I'm sure I can find a story at some point where I don't, but unfortunately it did feel a little bit, I think it's got to do with the insta-love as well, because there's an element of that in Twilight too, and it's just kind of like, it feels off to me. So anyway, but other than that, this was a lovely read. Can highly recommend it if you're looking for a definite YA story, because it felt very, very YA, that you just want to like breeze through and have an element of magic that's not necessarily like super complicated in any way. It's not really like fully described either. I'm hoping to get a little bit more info on it in the sequel, but I would recommend this. This was a lovely read. Or if I forgot to say, it's written by Kalynn Bayron. I think I just jumped onto the genres. Apologies. We're out of practice here. My book club's secondary pick for May was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Oh. This is a young adult fantasy, a retelling of a Korean legend called Shimchong. Yes, Shimchong. I like how it says perfect for fans of Uprooted. Isn't Uprooted? That's by Naomi Novik. Isn't that an adult book? I've not read it. I don't even think I own it. Anyway, and there's also a romance story in this book as well. But as for the story, we follow Mina, whose brother is engaged to Shimchong. They live in this village that has been kind of ravaged by storms for years. And it's said that it's because of the sea god, because it's mad at them or something. So every year they sacrifice a maiden to the sea in hopes that one of them will be the one that's fated to kind of stop these storms from happening. One of them will be the sea god's wife, I think it is. But the year that it's Shimchong's turn to be sacrificed, Mina sees how absolutely devastated her brother is that he's about to lose his fiance and decides to sacrifice herself in Shimchong's place, basically. So she jumps into the sea and she ends up in this underworld spirit realm kind of situation where she finds out that the sea god is actually asleep. So she has to team up with some people that she finds in the spirit realm as well and kind of figure out how to wake him up, how to solve these issues that's happening in her village, and that's what this is about. I'm still slightly confused about this, I'm not gonna lie. I read it during my 24-hour readathon if you want to check that out. Don't remember which corner. One of the corners, there's a card. But there were certain aspects to this that were just kind of confusing to me. I don't know, I think I might have to read it at some point because I'm still kind of confused about why certain actions were taken by certain characters in this book. And I don't mean Mina herself, I mean like other characters that were spoiler. I don't know. It was weird. I think I must have missed an explanation at some point that just turned out to be very important. So that's on me. That's on me as a reader. You should have paid attention. But as for Mina, the lead character, I loved her. I think she is a very headstrong kind of girl. She's very brave as well. She's very selfless. She definitely learns how to navigate the spirit realm, even though she gets some help as well. Some of the connections are so cute in the story too. It was very lovely written. Definitely not something that's too hard to read. I read it in I think it took like, how long is it? 300 pages maybe? I think it took like 5 hours for me, and that's in the middle of the night. So you can probably do better. But yeah, it was a very lovely one, very whimsical, very magical, and I will say I would have loved a little bit more explanation on the spirit realm. I feel like there were certain things that were just kind of breezed over a little bit. I would have wanted just a little bit more world building, if you will. Maybe some explanations on how the heck is she breathing underwater. Actually, I think that was explained, so I just don't remember because it's been a couple of weeks. But I remember thinking that at least there could have been a little bit more explanation in regards to the world. But other than that, I do see why this one has been so positively received, because it is definitely a cute, easy, breezy, beautiful read. I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. It was supposed to be easy breezy, and then I just, beautiful cover girl. Moving on before you turn an absolute idiot out of yourself. Okay. Yeah, I would recommend that, definitely. It was cute. So, and romance is kind of cute too. Also, if you're curious, because I forgot to say this, but this is the Fairy Loot edition, which is why it looks like this. She's a stunner. Next up, let's talk about one of the books that I read on Kindle. Because going into the month, I was like, I've been reading so much young adult lately. I just want to read something a little bit more adult. Like I was about to say old. I'm not old, but I'm not a young adult anymore. As much as I love reading young adult, because those stories are great. It's not too complicated. It's just like an easy read, you know? I do also like something that's maybe a little bit more relatable to me, which is also why I don't read a lot of young adult contemporary books, because adult contemporary are just more relatable. Young adult fantasy though, great. But going into the month, I had been reading a lot of young adult, so I just felt like reading something a little bit more adult. So I decided to go on my Kindle Unlimited and picked out Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. Yes, Lucy Score, which is the first book in... I was so confused about the town's name throughout the whole, like, the entire time I was reading the book, until one of the very last times they mentioned the town's name. And I truly read it, and I facepalmed for like a whole minute or something. I was like, you are so dumb. How did you not realize? So it's spelled Knockema. No, not A, O-U-T, yeah, which, you can probably see it when it's written on the screen right now, but for some reason, I mean, you're probably faster than I am, I'm not gonna lie. For some reason, I was like, Knogmoot or something. I don't really know what I was thinking. It clearly says knock him out, like knock him out. Yeah, that took me a long time to figure out. Anyway, but it's an adult contemporary romance. We have so many tropes in this one that I didn't really think about them when I was reading the book, and that's when I feel like tropes are actually performed well, because you'd like to see them, but you don't want to think about the fact that they're there too much, if you get what I mean. So, but anyway, in this book we follow a girl, a lady, whose name is not Daisy. What's her name? It's because the lead guy character keeps calling her Daisy. Her name is Naomi, okay. But Naomi has taken off to this town, this very small town, after she basically fled her own wedding by climbing out of the church basement's window. So she really did not want to get married. It's fine, you learn why, and it's understandable. So, but she takes off to this town where her twin sister is supposed to be at the moment. When she gets there, people are kind of mean to her. She doesn't really understand why, but as it turns out, her twin sister is a terrible human being, and they're identical, so everyone thinks that she's her twin sister. That's why they're not treating her very nicely. Also understandable. When she gets there, she's introduced to a guy called Nux. And he's a mean one to start out with. Again, understandable, because he thinks she's her sister, Tina. She also finds out that she actually has a niece. Tina has a daughter. And essentially the story is about Naomi figuring out how to kind of get over certain things in her life that's happened, but also at the same time without having anything. So like she doesn't have a car, she doesn't really have any money. She gets help from Knox. Knox is a very complicated kind of man. He does not do relationships at all, but he's very drawn he's very drawn to Naomi as well, even though she's so not his type. She's of course very drawn to him because he's a tall, dark-haired man who looks, you know, like a kind of like a bad boy situation, I suppose. Who doesn't love a rude, tall, dark-haired man anyway? So the story is about the two of them, also about Naomi getting a relationship with her niece as well, and it was really, really cute. I kind of went into it thinking that it was gonna be a little bit more like Mariana Zapata. I will say it still does have the vibe. It's a very long book for something that's a little bit rom-com-like. I mean, it's called Knock 'Em Out. That's basically, the series is called Knock 'Em Out, so that's basically when I decided, yeah, this is a rom-com. Now I've made up my mind, it's a rom-com, but it's still slow burn, filled with tropes, serious vibes, serious subjects, but at the same time also really, really funny and charming. I don't have much to say on the writing. I didn't feel like it was terrible at any points. It was just very enjoyable to me. It was very easy to read. I feel like the characters were fleshed out well as well, so I was just enjoying reading this, to be honest. I feel like I read it very, very quickly too. Considering it's almost 600 pages, it took me like 3 days or something, so yeah. But if you're looking for just like a funny, filled with tropes, but you don't necessarily think about it, like we have next door neighbor, we have fake dating as well, we have single parent, we have small town. What else is there? Kind of enemies to lovers as well at the same time. I'm pretty sure I've missed some, but new beginning as well. Like there's a whole lot of tropes in this one, but for some reason you don't necessarily think about them as you're reading, so maybe I shouldn't have pointed them out to you. I apologize. But yeah, can definitely recommend. It was cute. Also has a very high rating on Goodreads. Clearly, I'm not the only one who's a fan. But anyway, that was Things We Never Got Over. Oh, and then I read Heartstopper Volume 4. I kind of blend volume 3 and 4 together, so I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on in it, but it's Heartstopper and I love it. I can't wait for volume 5. I will say though, and I'm sure that you all know by now, this is a graphic novel. It's a coming of age story. It's also a coming out story. We have LGBT plus representation in it as well, because it is about two young guys, learning to know each other and also kind of learning to know themselves. While it's a very cute story, all of the volumes have been so cute so far. I do appreciate how they also touch on more serious subjects. There's talk about it, like ED, for example. It's also obviously talk about homophobia. So I appreciate that it kind of touches on these more like serious subjects in a very respectful, a bit of a lighter way without making it too light, if you get what I mean. Like, I feel like it's very young people friendly in that way, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to put it into words, but I feel like it just does it in a very nice, and it does it in a very good way. Yeah. But that was one of the 5 stars of this month. I love the Heartstopper, the whole thing. Would definitely watch the series again soon because it's adorable. So happy because I think they were renewed for season 2 and 3 as well, right? It's not over. We can expect more Heartstopper in the future, and I'm here for it. Next up, let's talk about, I think this is there's another contemporary. Okay, so we got 2 more contemporaries to talk about. But next up we have All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This is an adult contemporary romance. If you are new to Colleen Hoover, do not go into this thinking that it's a rom-com, because it's most definitely not. Colleen Hoover writes books that I think her goal is basically to crush her readers, but in a very respectful way somehow. Like it feels like that's her goal. So you can expect some laughs, but it's definitely not a rom-com. We're talking serious subjects here. In this book, we follow a couple. It's kind of interesting because we follow them in 2 different timelines. So we follow them that was really difficult to say, in the then, but also in the now. The then timeline is kind of like them meeting. They meet because basically their partners are cheating with each other. So our girl that we mainly follow is coming home one day, or she's visiting her boyfriend, but when she gets to the apartment, she finds a guy sitting outside and he doesn't look too happy, so she goes over to him and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm here to pick up my girlfriend. He's in there with your boyfriend." I'm laughing. It's quite funny. The meeting is funny, even though it's also very sad at the same time, because like cheating partners suck, okay. But the rest of the then timeline is basically them getting to know each other, seeing how they're growing more and more fond of each other, and just happy vibes. And then you got the now timeline, which is the complete opposite. It's so sad. The entire timeline is so sad, and it's like you get kind of whiplash swapping between the 2 timelines. There were times at the start of the book when I was reading about the now where I just wanted to read about the then. I just wanted to see how happy they were, because you're not really fully introduced to the story, like the issues that's going on in the now. But then later towards the end, I only wanted to read about the now because I get it, like you're happy, you were happy. But it's very effective in making you feel how frustrating the now is. I will say I don't think this is a spoiler because you learn about it in the first chapter, but this is a pregnancy story, more like not being able to conceive, so that is something to take in mind if pregnancy stories are not really your thing, or if it's something that triggers you in some way. Do not go into this. I know that it's kind of one of those things in books that either turns people completely off them. I'm one of those people that don't necessarily really enjoy pregnancy stories, whereas this one I actually did. So we'll say that, but if it's something that you don't want to read about at all for your own reasons, definitely keep it in mind. But I enjoyed it. I've tabbed it 3 times. Only 3. I don't know. I don't really know why. Oh no. They're all blue ones, by the way, which means that they're sad points. I don't know, but I'm putting this away by. And the last contemporary, which I'm actually really excited about because I bought book 2 and 3 and they arrived and I'm kind of like, I should put them on my July TBR, shouldn't I? But it's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is young adult contemporary mystery thriller. A tad, like a little, like a splash of romance, not a whole lot. It's not important to the story, not really. At least not in this one. I don't know about the next one. But not in this one. But in this book, we follow, it's a trilogy by the way, if I didn't make myself clear before. I have book 2 and 3, it's a trilogy. But in this book, we follow, what's her name? Pippa, right, it was on the P, okay. Pippa, who is she's so charming. I love her as a character. It's a great character. Anyway, she's a little bit quirky, she's very nerdy, a very clever, intelligent girl, and she's so funny too, so as for lead girls, I like her a lot. But she goes to school, and 5 years ago, there was a student from her school who was killed, murdered, by another student. And Pippa is kind of like, I don't think he did it. So for her school project, I think it's like a summer project. I don't really know how the school system works, but anywho. She takes it upon herself to basically prove that this guy who was accused of murdering this girl did not do it. But as she's working on this project, she's sent letters and messages from this mysterious person who's basically trying to get her to stop looking into this. And she also gets help from the accused murderers, the boy who was accused of murdering a fellow classmate. She's getting help from his brother as well, and there's a whole lot of town secrets that are kind of being unraveled. I'm looking forward to going into book 2 so much because I think we have some questions that were left unanswered in this one, and I think there's more town secrets to be unraveled. I want to know what the heck is going on. I'm so excited because this was really, really good. I think I was close to giving it a 5 stars. I think I ended up giving like 4.45 or something. It was just really, really good. Without telling you too much, I will say this is a bit of a thick book. It's over 400 pages, but without telling you too much about what's like, without spoiling anything, at the end of at least almost every single chapter, there's a production log that she does. So this is entry 7 because she is writing a school project, and it's basically like interviews, email chains, messages, rants from herself that she's basically writing down on her computer and stuff. And I really liked reading those. It was a lot of fun. It's basically you get to see her research as she's doing this project, but while there's still like proper writing as well. I don't know how to explain that, but I just like the entry logs, so I thought it was worth mentioning. It was funny because I brought this with me to I went on a little trip with 2 friends of mine and I brought this with me, and I told one of my friends who also reads a lot that I'm not really used to reading crime novels. So I'm reading a young adult one to start out with because, you know, young adult is a good entry point into different genres, I feel, because they're a little bit easier to read. Also keep in mind that my first language is not English. So it's just, I feel like that helps a lot. But she said that she was kind of confused about it being a trilogy because usually crime novels are, you get your questions answered at the end of the book. And I was saying how I didn't feel like everything was gonna be answered in this one. I thought that we have this like bigger case that they're gonna solve within 3 books, but that there might be some smaller points solved in this one. And I don't know, it was kind of interesting. Like, is that a thing? Are crime novel series not normal? Because like I'm also reading Truly Devious and it's the same situation in that one. You have this like bigger case that they're trying to solve, but you also have these smaller points. Something that happens during this book, for example, or during the first book in Truly Devious, that they have to solve throughout that book while also trying to look into this bigger picture thing. So I don't know. Those of you who are more well-read in the crime novel universe, let me know. Is that not, like, our series not common? Because I don't know. Anywho, we got 2 more books. This is the last book that I read during my 24-hour readathon, which is Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. I don't actually know if I'm pronouncing their last name correctly, but I think I've pronounced it 4 different ways, so we just gotta go with one of them by now. But this is young adult, fantasy, romance, LGBT plus representation. Although I will say, as much as the romance, that part of the romance was advertised for this one, I feel like, or not advertised, I feel like it was hyped up more than it was actually present in the story, which was a little bit confusing to me. It's also a point that I've seen other people make in reviews and stuff. I don't know. That was a little bit... I was very confused for some parts of this book because of that. But anyway, I'm also still confused about other parts of this book though. So I will point that out. Like, I still don't fully understand this. Not in the same way with The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, but in a different way. I just don't think I fully understand it. I don't know how to... It's fine. Anyway. It's funny how you start to record and suddenly there's like 100 people outside your window. What's going on with that? This is not a performance. Please go away. Leave me alone. Not to be a drama queen. But Serpent, Thorn. We follow our lead girl, Soraya, who has the ability... I wouldn't necessarily say it's an ability because it's not something that she actively does. But whenever she touches someone or something touches her, the person or the living thing or whatever else dies. Basically withers out and dies. So she's been hidden in the palace for basically her entire life, keeping her safe, but also keeping everyone else safe, keeping her ability a secret for everyone else. She's a princess, by the way. Thought that was important to point out. That's why she lives in a palace. Anyway, her twin brother, I believe it is? Yes. Her twin brother is coming up, and Soraya has to decide if she's gonna attend his wedding or not. She ends up going. There's also... She meets a man who's not our boy. A young guy. A young man? Anyway, who's seemingly not afraid of her powers for whatever reason. And I think for Soraya to meet someone who sees more than just the poisonous part of her kind of makes her start to think a little bit about what she's doing with her life, because it's really not much since she's just hiding away in the palace. So she has to make some decisions. She also has to figure out, what is this ability making her? Is she fated to be a princess, or is she fated to be a monster? Or as the cover says, sometimes the princess is the monster. You can be both, I suppose. Yeah. But I was so confused at certain points in the story. I think a part of the reason was that there was a word used about one of the creatures in this book that I just never... First of all, whenever I read it, I didn't know how to pronounce it, which is the whole thing. But I like how, for example, right now I'm reading the Scorpio races, and they keep talking about the water horses, which in... I don't actually know what language it is, but they don't call them water horses or kelpies. They call them kapelushkas. And it's actually written down in the book how you pronounce the word. I like how that is, like how that's done. So I have an idea instead of just reading the word. I'm pretty sure that was the thing throughout this book. If it's not, then I might just be misremembering. If it's not, disregard that point. But what I do remember, this was the last book that I read during my 24-hour readathon, and I remember it confusing me. I remember it being very weirdly paced. I remember being a little bit turned off by this kind of insta-love story, which is just not something that I enjoy reading about. Again, not to bring it up again, but Twilight, one of the reasons that I just didn't like it. And then it just, then it just took a turn and became something that I feel like the book wasn't supposed to be. And I don't really know I don't know how to talk about that without spoiling anything, so I'm not going to. Just know that like half the story isn't necessarily what you would think if you read the synopsis. Yeah. Dang, sometimes you just really want to talk about spoilers and you just can't. I ended up giving this, I think, 2.5 actually, but rounded up to 3 on Goodreads just because I wasn't enjoying it. And I know it's not just because I was tired. It was more than that, but I'm gonna hold on to it. I'll read it in the future at some point where I feel like being a little bit, let's try to give these other books a second chance, because sometimes a book just needs a second chance. But as for the first round with that one, not my favorite read. I don't know. Might just be me. And then the last book, I read this so quickly apparently. I can't even see when I read it in my graph. I have no idea. But the last book that I read was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I have put Muse of Nightmares on pause, so I'm reading it again in July. So if you want to know if I like that one, you'll have to wait until August. Wow, that's so long. That's so far in the future anyway. But this was lovely. It's young adult. I would say it's not necessarily super young adult though, because I feel like language-wise, it's very mature, but language is clean. It's not too graphic, so in that way, young adult most definitely. It's fantasy, romance, magic, gods, and just so beautiful. I don't know, I really loved this. I think I read it, when did I read it? I think I might have talked about it in one of my weekly vlogs. I think I said something like, there was an odd relatability to both of the lead characters, so both Laszlo, but also, oh gosh, what's her name? Blue Girl. Are you guys also sucky at remembering lead characters' names? It's like, you read too many books, you can't possibly remember all those names. That is so ironic, because they can't remember the city's name in this book. That's the whole thing. They call it Weep, that's not the city's name. Okay, anyway, what's her name though? Sarai. Okay, Sarai. But we follow Laszlo and Sarai, and mainly Laszlo, I feel, actually. So Laszlo is an orphan. He's a librarian, so he works with books, and he's very, like, more or less obsessed with this city that is known as Weep. It's a mythical place. It's kind of magical without there being actual magic necessarily. And Laszlo, throughout his entire life, has just dreamt to go to Weep. He has done so much research on it. He speaks the language that they speak in Weep, and he knows everything there is to know about Weep. He just really wants to go. One thing that's important to note about Laszlo, his name is Laszlo Strange. Strange is the name that they give orphans, but he's incredibly good at dreaming, hence Strange the Dreamer. But since Laszlo is basically an expert on Weep without having gone, so he doesn't fully know everything, he has a lot of questions about what happened in Weep. Why did it lose its name? Like, that's a whole thing. They can't remember its name. There's some mysterious things happening in Weep as well, and there's also this, like, there's a god slayer, but why do they call him the God Slayer? What did he slay since they call him the God Slayer? Who are these gods? So there's a lot of like questions that he has that he wants to be answered. And one day he gets the chance to actually go to Weep and finds out what's happening. I don't feel like I'm doing the synopsis justice, to be honest, but I'm also very careful with what I say because I don't want to spoil anything. I just want everyone who hasn't read this to read it, but choose to read it at a time where you feel patient, because it's a bit of a slower telling. It's very atmospheric though. It's very beautiful in the writing. It's very lyrical. Is that how you say that? I hope that's how you say that. It's just very beautiful and like flowy and gorgeous, stunning. I still have questions after reading the first one, which is why I'm looking forward to Muse of Nightmares so much. There's something about gold that's not really fully been answered to me. There's things with the blue people. the blue people, yes, that's not really been answered for me either. So I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel in July again, like pick it up again. I think I'm like 40 pages into it or something, but I put it on pause, not because I'm not enjoying it, but because I just have plans for June's reading. But definitely don't go into this one thinking it's gonna be, like, it's 500 pages first of all, so it's a little bit on the slower side. Don't expect a lot of action. You can expect mysteries though, and beautiful moments. I tabbed this so much. I would say if you've read The Night Circus, for example, and you liked that sort of story, the bit like slower but atmospheric read, you would enjoy this one too. Story-wise, doesn't really have much in common with The Night Circus, but as for the vibe of the book and like the way that it's written and stuff, I would say that I could kind of compare the two. They're obviously not like full on the same kind of writing style, but it's the slower pace. We're taking our time building up everything and just being through and through beautiful in a way. That's the vibe I'm talking about. So yeah, for those of you who enjoy stories like The Night Circus, would definitely recommend this one. It was just, I don't think I can come up with a better word than flowy and beautiful. So, is my camera really focusing on Fable again? That is so rude. I'm gonna turn those books around when I'm recording over here from now on. Anyway, so that was my last read. This was a 5-star for me. I just enjoyed it so much. I hope that Muse of Nightmares will also be a 5-star read, but we'll figure that out in July. And sorry for this very, very long wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it though. Actually, I forgot that I had read another book on Kindle. I just skipped past it on my list. So, oops, my bad, but it was The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie, which is an adult contemporary romance. It's a mafia romance, and oh gosh. So I went into this one because it popped up so often on my Goodreads from people, like on my Goodreads timeline, from people who'd read it and loved it, so I was very curious about it, and we'll get to that. But this story is, like I said, it's a mafia romance. We follow our lead girl and also this kind of like mob boss kind of guy who's super rude. Our lead girl is a bit of a goody two-shoes, if I may say so. Like she's known as the sweet Labella. I don't remember their last name, something like that. Abella? I don't remember, but so she's like known for just being sweet and smiley and polite all the time. Essentially what happens is that she has done something in the past. She's not a virgin anymore, and like she's known in this community to not be a virgin anymore. So although she's the oldest sister, and that makes her the first one that's supposed to be married off to some mob guy, because she's not a virgin anymore, she's not pure or whatever. So her little sister has to be married off, and she has to, her husband or her fiance ends up being this very rude mob boss who we also follow. Unfortunately, she's not interested in him at all, and as it turns out, our lead girl doesn't really know why, but she's kind of drawn towards him. He's kind of drawn towards her, even though they're not each other's types at all. And I don't know what else I want to say than that. I don't know why I went into this one, because first of all, I don't like mafia romances. My main problem with that is, this is fully on me for actually going into a mafia romance, by the way, but this whole thing with women being married off as objects and women having to stay pure and everything for their man, and while the men sleep around all they want to, of course. It just kind of turns me off. Like, I don't like it. I don't enjoy reading about it. I think it's because as a person, I wouldn't want to be in that community myself. I wouldn't want to be treated like an object, married off, and then having to do whatever my husband was telling me to do. It's not something that I see for myself. It's not something that I enjoy reading about because of that. So that was super frustrating to start out with, but then our guy in this one is the most possessive lead male character that I have ever read about. Like, possessiveness can be charming to a point, to an extent, and this is possessiveness to the point where even if she was willingly going to be with another man because she didn't want our lead guy, he would harm him because, well, she's mine. Like, even if she didn't want our lead guy, he would go off and harm this other guy because she's mine. And that's just that's not it for me, so I didn't really enjoy it because of that. Like, possessiveness to an extent is okay, but I feel like this kind of crossed a line for me. I get that it may be some other people's cup of tea, and I won't judge you for that, but for me personally, not for me. I think I'm gonna give the sequel a try because it's not necessarily a full-on mafia romance. It's about a cop instead. At least half the lead characters in that one is a cop. One of the lead characters is a cop. But as for The Sweetest Oblivion, was not for me. So that was the thing. But still, like, we all have different tastes. If you enjoyed it, then that is completely okay, because we all have different tastes and different lines that to be crossed and stuff. I don't know how to phrase that. Just like what you like. Yeah. So that was my last book. Whoops. But anyway, if you have read any of these books that I've talked about today, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you disagree with some of my points, also let me know in the comments. Call me out all you want. If you agree with any of them, also let me know. But that is all I got for you guys today, so I hope you all enjoyed this video. Feel free to like it if you did. If you want to hang out with me and everyone in the comments and nerd out about books, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. Also, if you want to see more wrap-ups, TBR videos, bookish unboxings, reading vlogs, 24-hour readathons, and everything else, definitely stick around. And also, if you want to check out the book club, like I mentioned, there is a link to it at the top of the description box in the pinned comment. But that is all I got for you guys today. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
Oh, you know.